Thank you very much, Charlie, for the introduction. I believe that we can very smoothly start our next session, which will be delivered by myself. So yes, it will be about Power BI monitoring, but also a little bit about Fabric, because the REST API is exactly the same for both Power BI and Fabric right now. So let's start very quickly with a short agenda. Okay, does work smoothly. So I will start with the proper introduction. Later we'll move to the governance and adoption challenges in Power BI. This is extremely important from this background perspective. This I will try also to describe you why you should care about monitoring of all of the activities that are happening within your Power BI tenant or Fabric tenant. And also you will see it clearly grouped into three categories, like this governance administration one. Later there will be the adoption challenges, and last but not least also the financial perspective of all of this. Just after this theoretical or a little bit also practical background, we'll move directly to the tool. I will present you one of the possible architectures of the solution that will help you to capture almost everything which is happening within a Power BI tenant. I will describe a little bit Power BI REST API calls that you should take care on, and later we'll move a little bit to the data warehouse. The final part will be a short demo, the overview of the repos that you can build using the data from a data warehouse, and I will also share a few information about the cases and where and when Power BI tracking and monitoring, from my perspective, was a pretty neat solution and answer some challenges. I believe that we'll have also some time for the Q&A. However, if you have any questions in the meantime, you can just put them into the comment section, and I will try to answer them with the flow of the presentation. Okay, so let's go, like a quick introduction of myself. So thank you, Charlie, for the correct pronunciation of my name. So it's Michał, and my surname is Dębski. You can see two funny characters in my name and surname. Those are the characters from the Polish alphabet, and I am Polish as well. So who am I? I'm one of the founders of Astral Forest Consultancy Boutique, and right now I'm doing like the three things, let's say. First one is deeply related to this monitoring part as well, because I'm really into the topic of administration, governance, and setting up Power BI or Fabric environment correctly, knowing who is using what, and applying some kind of the governance practices, tracking the adoption as well. I'm also a little bit engaged into the prophecy solution. So once again, it's a little bit more from the master data perspective, but also touches the topics of governance of the data. And I like the analytics in Casino. So this is the things like this. A little bit from my past, which is relevant, I believe. I started like my career in MicroStrategy. Right now, MicroStrategy is all about Bitcoin, but before it went crazy about Bitcoin, it was a very neat tool, and this software taught me two important lessons. One of them is the importance of the good data modeling. The standard old way good data modeling dated back to the 90s, I believe, or 80s, with the Kimball approach. And the second one is the importance of the metadata. Because this part of the metadata was even included in MicroStrategy solution, there was like a separate database with this metadata. And this is something that I like to imitate, for example, in the ETL design. Okay, so just a private slide as well. I am big dog lover, side-hand lover, so if you like dogs or other animals, just you can ping me, and I will be extremely happy to chat about those magnificent creatures, especially the sidehounds or greyhounds or anything that runs very quickly. Okay, so that's all for the introduction, and right now let's go and let's try to deep dive a little bit into the challenges of governance and adoption within Power BI or Fabric as well. So first of all, I've grouped those kind of challenges into three different categories, as you can see. Once again, governance and administration, adoption, and finances. As I work quite a lot with those kinds of topics, finally I realized that we have 3 different audiences or populations interested by tracking the usage of Power BI and the metadata of the objects within Power BI service, but they are paying attention to the different aspects. So let's start with the first one. The first one is someone who is responsible for maintaining, keeping in order the Power BI platform. Most probably it will be someone called Power BI administrator or Power BI architect, senior Power BI guru, or governance lead as well in some circumstances. Depends really on the organization. And how do I like to approach it? I like to see this person as a gardener, as someone who is responsible for gardening. You'll see very quickly why this metaphor is quite useful. So let's imagine that you are joining a new organization and you are this kind of a person, you are Power BI administrator. So first of all, you would like to know how many different objects do you have within your Power BI tenant. How many different semantic models, how many different reports, how many different data sources, workspaces, users, and so on. And Power BI itself service, you cannot very easily find this kind of information. And this is just like the first level of the information that can be useful. It is useful basically to your job. The other one is how many used and unused objects actually do I have within my Power BI tenant? Because if I have like 10,000 objects, Power BI reports, and half of them or even more is not used, so what's the purpose of keeping them? And this is when you should. This is the moment when you should thinking about this. You should be thinking about the garden, because if you have in the garden like lots of different herbs and the different trees that are collapsing, that are rotting away, it's not a nice garden. You should just remove the branches which are not longer needed, the plants that are developing too quickly, and they are overriding the space of the others. This is exactly the same, which is what is happening with the reports in the proper scale. You have too many reports, some of them becoming unused and redundant. You should remove them. But in order to do so, you must answer the question, which reports are really used or which reports are not used at all. The next thing is also that the fact in Power BI, you can attribute the accesses very easily. And you can attribute the access on so many different levels, because you can give the access on the application level to some people. You can also use workspace level accesses, the report level accesses, and even like the build permissions on a specific semantic models. So this is like the way you can attribute those accesses. But there is even more. You can also attribute these accesses either on the individual users, or you can use also Enter ID or Azure Active Directory groups. And right now, as far as I know, in Power BI service, there's no way to know who is a member of a given group, of a given Enter ID group. So it's kind of messy to, for example, check very easily in Power BI service through the user interface to what kind of the objects a particular person does have the access to. Or the other way around, who can access a particular Power BI report and how? It can be done, but it's not so intuitive, it's not that easy. So what's more, what comes very often, the question is who are the owners of the reports in Power BI, especially if you are producing lots of different reports and there is some kind of the rotation also among the employees in the organization, some people leaving the organization. If you have the proper scale and you don't have very strict processes, you can find yourself in the situation you don't know who is responsible from the business side for the given report. So you'd like to know it, because sometimes you just need to manage this kind of report, because maybe the data source is impacting some or 2 or 3 reports, and some decisions must be taken, but before they are taken, they must be validated by the business. A typical case that I had like a few months ago, there was a data source SAP instance that was to be terminated. So first of all, what needed to be done was to check all the dependencies, the lineage, basically the lineage of the data source on the report zone. So this was the first thing to do. Once the lineage was discovered and all the dependencies were covered, we needed to see if the reports are used or not, because if they are not used to, we don't need to bother. But if the reports are used to, there's a next challenge, next step that must be taken in order to just move forward, the definition of the business owners. The way I'm doing it, I'm just looking for the people who are the biggest consumer of a given report. They are using the report the most often, and I'm asking them to become the owners. The other perspective is also, how are your semantic models going? How are the refreshes going? Because especially if you have the dedicated capacity, you would like to know as well, you would like to identify, for example, the troublemakers, the semantic models who started to become heavy to refresh, started to consume lots of resources, either from your Power BI or maybe from the underlying data layer as well. It's not also, there is also a challenge about the self-service, because even in some organizations, okay, I have my capacity, I'm taking care only about the capacity, but sooner or later, there are some business users who are either developing the reports in their own personal workspaces, or if you have the special, like the managed service workspace for them, they are contributing to this managed workspaces as well. And it's very good practice as well to track the usage of the self-created reports. There are two reasons why it's a good practice. The first one is that if some kind of the report is getting the traction and it's becoming to be used very heavily in the organization, this is a perfect candidate to be migrated from the self-service zone to the enterprise one. Why? Just because of sometimes the data trustworthiness issues. You want to be sure that the data is trustworthy and everything is clear, and there are no mistakes that can be done by the business user in the Power BI report. And the second thing is just the security of the report itself, and taking care of it, and the central department of BI in the event of a person responsible for creation of the report leaving the company. If someone leaves, it may be difficult just to find out why the report was built in such a way, what was the business rule that was applied, and the usual stuff like this. So you are just reducing the potential backlog from the future if you are picking up this kind of report and making it enterprise. Last but not least, you have also the security aspects, because, for example, in many companies, you have these guest users and the users from the other organization joining the company temporarily, or for the few weeks, or for the few months, or even few years. I would like to know, for example, if they are not abusing Power BI functionalities like export to Excel. So I'd like to define this people from the other organization and check if everything is used correctly. You don't have any kind of suspicious activities regarding your most valuable data assets. And all of these challenges are attributed to this, let's say, administrator. Another perspective is the adoption one. And in this adoption perspective, once again, I have like the two different levels of the adoption, public adoption audience. So first one will be a little bit more strategical. So strategical will be, first of all, interested in what is our Power BI adoption or penetration. So how many users with the accesses to Power BI platform or Fabric platform are actively using it. So this is the first case. Another scenario that I would be interested also, what is our data trustworthiness? So how many certified data assets are consumed, or what is the ratio of such a consumption? The other thing, which is also extremely useful, is just to define the 20% of the top data assets within your organization. If you know the consumption of Power BI reports, which are which are at the top of all of this data infrastructure, you can identify also the underlying layer. And in the scenarios like the migration of the underlying data layer, where should you start, because you know the statistics. You can identify very easily your most important data assets. Or in case, for example, in the implementing, if you want to implement the new initiatives such as ETL tracking or the data quality of your ETL processes, you know also where to focus. What kind of ETL flows you should start with to ameliorate them, to make them better. So those are those kind of categories, let's say, more strategical. The other ones are more tactical, I would say. So imagining that I'm a leader of one of the departments, let's say pricing department, and I already have tons of reports because I was working very heavily with my BI team in the last 3 or 4 years, and I developed like very well thought of 30 or 40 different report pages. I'm very neatly covered right now when it does come to my analytical needs. Maybe I need some changes, or if in the event of a completely new business initiative, I will need a new report. But 80% of my basic needs are already covered. I don't need any new reports to be produced on the weekly basis, let's say. But right now, I changed a little bit my focus. Instead of report creation, I would like the reports that are already there to be used as much as possible by the people who have the access to them. So I'm reorienting from the development mode to the mode which has the goal to increase the adoption. So if I want to increase the adoption, I shall know my user base. So I would like to know what are the most frequently used reports within my BI department. Who are the users, like the top users? Who can be my Power BI champions? So the people who will help me to lead the mission of making Power BI adoption bigger. I would like also to have the list of the people with the access to my reports, but the people who are not using Power BI at all, because I would like to ask them the question. So why you are not using Power BI? Do you even know that you have the access? Did you have like the complete onboarding process? Do you have like the trainings, or maybe you don't understand the report because it's too complicated and it needs to be simplified? All of these questions should be asked, but should be asked to the correct group of people, so the people who are not using Power BI. And of course, once you are already putting the measures to increase your adoption in place, you want to track them. You want to track the progress. You want to know if you have more users, what is happening with your Power BI champions, what is happening also with the people lagging behind. All of this information. If you know also the advanced and not advanced users, you can better address the training programs to them as well, because you can propose something simpler to the people who are barely viewing Power BI reports, and something different to the people who are already, let's say, a little bit more advanced. And we have finally this third perspective, so the finances. So first of all, how much do I spend on my Power BI, on licenses, on capacities? Can I save some money on it? And like the very nice and hot topic right now, Showback and Chargeback reports about my Power BI consumption. So this is also something interesting. Okay, so let's move forward a little bit and just cover very briefly right now the default ways of getting some of information about the usage of your Power BI platform that are available by default. So you have like the feature usage and adoption, activity overview. You have also this classical usage metrics from Power BI report, but you have some serious drawbacks of this kind of the solutions. So you don't have the historical data in it. So this is the biggest one, because you have up to 30 days of the data. So it's not sufficient, for example, to run the periods comparison. So where are you today versus the same period last year? The reporting itself is pretty basic. So you cannot, for example, answer the question, what kind of reports, or name just the top 5 reports consulted by my key account managers in my company. This is something which is impossible, because very often those kind of reports will be on the workspace level and not on the not necessarily on the tenant level. If you don't have the data, you cannot see the trends, the tendencies, and as I mentioned, it's not that easy to just reason out of a single workspace. You don't have the information about the accesses and licenses consumed, and if you don't have this statistics, you cannot find the unused or rarely used objects. But from the BI perspective, the biggest drawback is the fact that you don't have like the proper data warehouse about all of this data. All you have is like the black box, the semantic models in your Power BI tenant, which are created by default, but you don't know from where exactly this data is flowing. And you cannot use it to, for example, add additional source of information into it to make your analytical platform about Power BI or Fabric even better. Okay, so after this introduction, let's move to the architecture of the solution that you can build. So this is, of course, only just an example of one of the possible architectures. Let's start with the data sources. So first, and the most important data source is Power BI REST API. And from Power BI REST API, you can get basically the two categories of information. First one is the user's activities. So you can get all the information about the user's activities. So who entered which report, who downloaded the report, who modified it, etc. And also the metadata of the object. So all the dependencies, so in which workspace a particular semantic model is located, and which workspace a particular report is located, what kind of semantic model is behind, etc. And also the accesses of the people or the groups to the given Power BI objects. The second data source presented on this screen is simply Graph API. And for Graph API, you can get the information like the licenses on the individual level. So who has the access to Power BI using Pro license or price or a premium per user license. Plus you have also the information about Entra ID groups and group members. So this is the way to know who exactly has the access to a given Power BI object within your Power BI tenant. And if your Entra ID, or as it used to be called Azure Active Directory, is well maintained, you can also get the information about, for example, the job positions of the people, the departments they are in, the cost centers, the geography, stuff like this. Those are only like the two main data sources. Sometimes you can get this HR information also from the other systems, if this is available, or you can also connect as the next data source Microsoft Forms, for example, with the surveys asking the people about the quality of your Power BI platform. So all of these data sources in the given example are connected using service principle with the correct accesses, and there is Azure Data Factory, which is responsible for the data acquisition and also for the data orchestration. So Azure Data Factory connects using service principal credentials, service principal to the Graph APIs, downloads the data, and later schedules all the treatment. And the treatment is done in small Azure SQL DB, which is divided into 3 zones. You will have like the bronze, silver, and gold. And Azure Data Factory is used to launch SQL procedures, the sort procedures, to flatten your data acquired from API. This would be like the JSON-like structures, and using the SQL stored procedures, you will transform them to the gold schema with the facts and dimensions. Once it's done, using this data model, the Power BI semantic model can be created, and upon the semantic models, you'll find different reports depending on the audience you want to address. Okay, so let's move forward a little bit right now, once we covered this aspect of architecture, and go to the data acquisition. A few the key information about REST API. So first of all, the documentation does exist. of Power BI REST API. I would say it's not bad, but you need to learn how to read it. At least it was my case. At the beginning, I was a little bit, how to say it, over reading about all the informations, but later, once I learned how to read and process all the information, the documentation became much more clearer. So you can get basically the list of all the API calls that you should make. You can retrieve the information about the users, workspaces, capacities, reports, semantic models, tenant settings, which is also interesting, the refreshes, the endorsement, which is also interesting because using this information from the endorsement, you can track your data trustworthiness, let's say. But there is one special API call, and this is workspace info get scan result. And I would like just to bring your attention to this one. This is the admin API call, because in Power BI REST APIs, you have two categories of the API calls, non-admin and admin. What's the difference? Extremely simple. For the admin, you need to have the higher privileges. So how to obtain these privileges? You create your service principal within Azure. The best practice is to add the service principal to the group, Enter ID group, and this group you are assigning the privileges in Power BI tenant. You need to have administrator privileges to access Power BI tenant admin pane, and in this pane you can just add your group with service principal to the correct options, to the correct settings. Okay, a few words also about the Graph API. So using Graph API, you can download all the information about Enter ID and Enter ID objects. Once again, your service principal needs to have the correct privileges to be able to get all of this information from the API. I know that in some organizations it can be challenging to get such privileges, but if you try really hard, normally it's possible and feasible to get this done. And once again, you are getting the information about the Enter ID groups, about the members of these groups, the licenses, and different users' attributes such roles, departments, and so on. And here on the screen also you can see an example of Azure Active Directory flow, which is used to get the information about the memberships of a particular Enter ID groups. One thing just to consider as well, be careful what kind of Enter ID groups you are getting information from, because normally you need only those who exist within your Power, who are used, not exist, who are used within your Power BI tenant. You don't need every single Enter ID group that exists within your organization. Okay, so this is a short examples of the data warehouse. So you can see a few facts. I will show you very briefly how does it look on the report level. The most of the facts are the snapshot facts. So this is something to consider as well, that normally, for example, this fact, the one which is called RLS, role level security, or user report access. This is the snapshot, which is just taking the information of all the security setup as it was at the end of a given day. In the SQL DB, you can just have like the normal bronze, silver, and gold layer. Bronze, silver, gold, also basically those are the schemas. I strongly encourage you as well to have the fourth schema, which is like the configuration, with as much of the metadata of all your data flows as possible. The cost of this database is not that high. As far as I recall, it's under 100 euros per day or per month, all of this infrastructure. And of course, it depends also on the size of your Power BI deployment, but in the most of the cases, the costs are not that high. Okay, So I believe this is the end of this part of the presentation, and I will just show you some Power BI reports right now. Okay, so the Power BI reports, of course, everything here is dummy. I hope that you can see it pretty well. So let's start. So this is the Power BI applications, and you can see to the left that I've grouped the reports into 3 categories. At the beginning, like we have this governance part, we have adoption and finance part, and let's start with this governance report. So first of all, here we have the list of not used reports. So this is the table. There will be lots of tables actually in this example because it's extremely operational, I would say. So here you can see, for example, the information about the reports which are not used at all in the organization. You can define like the period you would like to find your reports in. So here I just put the number 15 last weeks. So I'm looking for the reports that weren't opened or used, or nobody interacted with them in the last 15 weeks. Of course, I can also filter to just, for example, exclude the reports that are deleted. I can check also the workspace type. If I'm going for the personal workspaces or the classical enterprise workspaces, I can limit my just to the workspace or even a given report if I would like to. But what's the most important for me here? If I choose like the correct time parameter, I'm just exporting, most of the cases, I'm exporting this table to Excel, like a classical business user. So I'm exporting this information to Excel, and this report ID is the column of the data which is the most important to myself, because later I can just take this ID and run a PowerShell script that would just run through my Power BI tenant and put all of these reports which are unused into archival. And here I may share a story from the beginning of this year. So at the beginning of this year, I had like almost 3,000 reports, 3,000 reports that needed to be put into the archive. So I prepared such a table, and later I ran the script in PowerShell. So everything later was stored into Azure Data Lake storage. And after this archival, I anticipated some Jira tickets. People asking, okay, so I had a report over there, but I cannot find it anymore. Do you know what happened? But you know what? There was absolutely 0 Jira tickets. Nobody cared about this unused object. So it just shows you that even if the scale can be pretty big, because I was talking about like 3,000 reports right now, don't be afraid. Mostly if they are not used, you can just put them into archival. The parameter I used was like the 12 months here. So this is something to consider as well, because sometimes you do have the seasonal reports as well. Okay, so let's go through the next one. This is the one that I'm using to control the role-level security across different semantic models. So of course, I have many of them here. And why is it useful? Because if I have like 300 of semantic models to manage, it's extremely difficult to go to every single one of them and verify role-level security. So this is the reason why you can scan Power BI REST API and retrieve this metadata from the reports and get the information about the role-level security setup within your semantic models. Okay, so I will just go here. Something happened. Okay, I can see. So first of all, you have the name of the role. You know to which semantic model it applies. You have the name of the semantic model, the workspace, also the reports that are connected to the semantic model, and so on, the name. And you can also see if the report, the role-level security, is based on the entry ID group or not. So here we have the entry ID group, which is named Power BI all, and here is unassigned. So it does mean that this role in this semantic model does not use any entry ID group. It just constructed based on the user display name that you can find here. So what can I do right now? I can contact the person responsible for the particular semantic model. Okay, just let's pretend it's not the personal workspace, and ask this person, okay, you know what, maybe you should just do it a little bit better and build this role-level security around the proper entry ID group. What's more, here I can see the table and the DAX expression related to the roles. So as you can see, those are empty. So most probably they shouldn't even be existing. But let's find the next one. Okay, so the next one, I can see that the next role-level security is based on the fact table. It's normally it's not the best practice. So once again, I can reach out to the developer of the semantic model and ask him to or her to make some amendments to maybe do the security role a little bit better. This security role looks correct. And maybe this one, it can be done a little bit better. It's not terrible, but yeah. So it allows you to control the quality of the role-level securities across all of your semantic models. Yeah, this is the one that I like, because this is the place in which you can basically check up all of the accesses to the given objects in a Power BI tenant. So of course you can choose whatever object you wish or the user that you wish. Also, this is the snapshot, so most probably will be interesting in the accesses as they are per today. But as we can have many different snapshots. In case of the security audit, you can get back, for example, 2 months ago and check how the security looked like 2 months ago and answer some audit questions. Once again, you can see if the access is provided on the user level or if it's provided on the Entra ID group level. So here we have the user level accesses. And this line is already the access which is provided on the Power BI admin Entra ID group. We have the user display names, the mails, and the object types. So here we have all of the objects in a Power BI tenant that you can use to attribute the accesses, and also the information, of course, of the name of the object, but also of the type of the access. So here we can see that someone has the build permissions on these semantic models. This report was shared through link. This person can modify the semantic models, and here you have also the short description. Basically, if this person can modify, it does mean that the role-level security does not apply to this particular user. So how can you use it? First of all, it's a tool that you can verify all the accesses. And the second thing, you can just start and plan, for example, to make your governance, administration, and the security processes a little bit better. And you can just, once again, export it to Excel, play with it, and decide how, for example, your Entra ID groups should look like to make your access policy better. Here I have something also which I use to track the self-service reports. As you can see, this is mostly focused, at least this variation of this report is focused on this private workspaces, the personal workspaces. But if you have neatly separated like the workspaces in your organization, which are like the standard enterprise BI and also the self-service, managed self-service workspaces, for example, using the prefixes or suffixes, you can create a very similar report which will be focalized, for example, on your managed self-service reports. And using this information, you can define how many users at the minimum a given report should have in the last, it's here 15 weeks, but you can have like half a year of any given parameter, and you will see the list of the reports. If, for example, you choose the parameter that you would like to note all the reports that have more than 100 users that are self-service, you'll have the list over there. So this list later just can go to your backlog, and you can consider the migration of all of these reports to your enterprise zone. Once again, here we are coming to the page that gives you the suggested business owners. The suggested business owners. So we are coming back to the situation from the beginning of my session, when I was telling you a story that some of the data source, the SAP instance, needed to be migrated, and the problem, of course, is who is responsible for the decision of what to do with a particular report. So using the information about the most active users, like here, for example, this one has 11 views, this one as well, but this is a dummy data. Most probably this person can be asked to become a business owner. If this person is reluctant, you can always threaten a little bit and tell him or her that if you are not ready to become business owner, this report will be deleted. If the people, if the reports are important for the people, most probably they will agree to become the owners, or they will indicate another person, like the boss or someone else, who should be the owner. Once again, this is one of the tables which is frequently exported to Excel because you have the emails, and using these emails and the information about the last activity date and the number, you can just also prepare like the standard email formula and send all the needed reports, all the needed emails to the correct people, asking them to become the business owner and solve the issue, for example, in the planning of migration or consolidation of the reports, or anything like this. Next table, which I like a lot, this is the information about the lineage of all your objects in your Power BI tenant. So starting with the application name, going to the workspace dedicated for the reports, going to the report name, workspace dedicated to the semantic model upon which a given report is based, the semantic model name, the data flow if you use it, and the data flow workspace and the data flow name. Finally, to the gateway, if it does exist, like here, for example, and the external sources. So using this table, basically you have all the information about the main dependencies of the objects within your Power BI tenant. Of course, you can use this filter pane as well to narrow down to the particular, let's say, a semantic model if you just want to see a semantic model and all of this information about it, all of these dependencies. So quite useful, and I think that the table, it's not that bad as the visualization in the case of something complex as Power BI lineage. So what I didn't have enough time, unfortunately, to prepare the information about the tenant settings, and I didn't have the time to prepare the information, also the demo about refresh semantic models and data flows, but maybe one day in the next presentation, all of this will be already ready. Okay, so let's go right now to the adoption pane. So we'll start with this overview, and this overview is like dedicated for, let's say, for more strategical perspective. And I just want to bring your attention to the few key information. So first of all, tracking your adoption rates on the across all your tenants. So you can see your users activity here. So how many active users do you have in the selected period, and how many users are the users with accesses, and the percentage of this number. So if you hear this example, we have like 5K active users and 6K users with the accesses. So I would say that it's pretty decent, like the result. But in some organizations, you may have like only 1,000 users who are active and many different accesses. So this gives you the information, where are you on your adoption journey, and also gives you a benchmark, where should you go. The quickest way to increase, of course, the percentage of active users is just to retrieve the accesses from the people, but doesn't mean that it is the smartest one. So this is something that I like to use in this, let's say, long time horizon to check up where I am on my adoption journey. something relatively similar is also this the usage of the certified object. So if you have already an organization like the policy, like the governance policy, and the certification process, that some kind of the criteria must be met in order to certify the given Power BI report or semantic models, this is something that you can track. And the certification process can be used as a measure, as a tool that can be measured to check upon your data trustworthiness. So let's say that you are starting today, you are barely having like a few certified objects, but your goal may be to have in few years, in few years from now, maybe you will go to the number of 60% or 70% of the usage of the certified objects. The same rule applies to the workspace usage. So here you have the information about all the actions in the enterprise zone workspaces and also across all the workspaces. And these all workspaces can also include like the personal workspaces, or if in your data warehouse you define them correctly, it may also apply to your self-service, the governed self-service part. And like this, you can see how many actions you have in your enterprise zone, and what is the percentage of these actions in this enterprise zone versus the total actions that are executed by the users. You can also apply like the special AI to identify Power BI champions, so that people who are more advanced than the others. The fanciest AI that I like to use is the series of ifs. And in this series of ifs, you can just check up the particular actions of Power BI users. The actions, for example, like the bookmarks or the comments, or connects with Excel, analyze in Excel actually. So these people, they have a little bit more advanced skills than the others, and you can flag them as Power BI champions. And you can also track how many of them you have in your organization. The last thing that I mentioned also as the potential data source, and I prepared for you in this demo, is the NPS score, so net performance score. If you construct like the proper Microsoft Forms phase and you have the process in place, the process that asks your Power BI users about their opinion, how do they feel with Power BI platform and service, how do they feel about the services delivered by your data or PI department, you can integrate also this information in your reporting and create this global overview. So those were like the most key aspects for myself. Of course, you can track all of this information in the time, and you have some information about the departments. So in this way, you are able to define like the most advanced departments and all the departments who have like lots of access and does not use Power BI in the manner you wish them to use. So this may be an opportunity to grow your Power BI adoption bigger. So once we've covered the strategical aspect, this is something more close to the ground. So this is this operational information. On this report, if you are building something like this, I would advise also to apply role-level security. Role-level security, and you can give the access to your business owners, business sponsors, for example, from the marketing department, pricing, controlling department, you name it, and everyone can see their own workspaces, semantic models, and reports that they are responsible for, that they are paying for, that they are maintaining, that they are making evolve. So imagining that let's imagine that we are this accounting representative. So if I have the access only to my accounting information, so I can go down and I can see all the semantic models, or I can go even more down and I can see the most used reports and basically all the usage of the reports. Once again, here we don't have many activities because this is like the dummy data, but I have this APAC report, which is the most used one, and I can see who are my users, what kind, who they are, what users are the most frequent ones, and what users they don't use this repo at all. Here, everyone with the access apparently is using this repo. I have also information about the activities. So the activities like who is viewing report, exporting, renaming, and so on. This is just the randomly picked up activities, but in real life you will have like next to 140 different activities to check upon, and you can very easily see, for example, who is connecting to the to which data model, to which semantic model, for example, with Excel. And of course, you can track all of these changes in time. And last but not least, you can have information also about the financial aspects of your Power BI deployment. So here, this report that I prepared for you is mostly about the individual licenses consumption. So here you can just put the price that your enterprise has negotiated with your CSP or in your EA with Microsoft. This is the premium per user price. This is the pro price. And once it's done, here I selected the accounting department. So in this accounting department, you can simply see how many licenses and what type of licenses do you have, and what is the monthly estimated cost. So this is one of the ways. Of course, you can find similar info also, for example, in Microsoft 365 pane, but you can also use this kind of report if you build it by yourself for the Showback or Chargeback purposes. You have the clear information about the active licenses and the inactive licenses. So here I can see that Eddie Nysen, he's not an active Power BI user, so his license can be revoked, and I can reassign his access to someone else who will maybe use Power BI a little bit more than Eddie. How to identify inactive users totally depends on your policy. I recommend to identify a person inactive if there was no activity in the last 6 months. But this is just a parameter, and you can make your own decision. Okay. I believe that this is the end of Power BI demo. And the examples. So just a few cases right now to share with you. So you can clean up the reports. Here's this example that I mentioned already, that almost 3,000 reports that are unused. It gets a little bit more tricky with the reports that are rarely used, because sometimes you have this report which is like already orphaned, and the person just by accident opens this report and sees that there is nothing there that would be out of interest, so it's leaving the report, but you still have this view registered. So what to do with them? Basically the same thing. You can just list them. You can firstly contact all the presumed business owners what should be done with these reports. Once you obtain the decision and the report is not used and was opened by an accident, you can put it into the archival. Another case that I also like to use Power BI REST API is to do the proper audit of the Power BI estate or Fabric estate right now, just to know exactly by the numbers how everything looks like and how it's used, how it's set up. It's very neat and visible. Driving adoption of data products. So this is the reason why I mentioned to you that it's nice to give the access to this report, especially this tactical adoption overview to the business people, to the business sponsors or the business owners of the particular zones of reporting. Having this information, the data, they can better work with you on increasing adoption rates of your Power BI deployment, proposing the trainings to the given people, and also developing the reports in a given way, because maybe some reports are mostly used because either they are successful and really responding to the business needs, or maybe they were designed some way that make them better than the others. And as very often, as I mentioned also, it can be used in the migration cases if you want just to, for example, have the clear overview of your most critical data assets, and you are preparing to migrate, for example, from Synapse to Fabric, or from Snowflake to Databricks, or anything like this, and knowing the consumptions of your reports, you will know also what kind of the data assets are the most important. Just maybe last thing, as I look at this information, the Pareto rule is clearly visible, and almost in any single organization you will find this top 20% of the reports which are responsible for the 80% of the traffic. Sometimes it's 78%, sometimes it will be like 82%, but you know, this is also like the Gaussian statistic, and they are just converging into 80%, whatever the organization is. So yeah, that's all. I hope that it was something interesting to you. And yeah, you can rate my session as well, but I see that also the organizers, they have the proper tool to rating the sessions, so you can use the official tool. It will be better, I believe. So thank you very much for your attention, and I think that in a few minutes we'll have another nice session.
Great. Yes, thank you very much for that, Michał. And yeah, it was a very informative session. You got a great set of Power BI reports there that give you a lot of information about a lot of the internals and how Power BI works. I'm sure that they're really, really useful in organizations that you've been deploying them to. It's a lot of insight, actually, more than I expected you could get on Power BI. So yeah, really, really good work there.